Hello and welcome to your Recipe for Financial Success with me, Emma, and my colleagues Becky and Julie.
In each episode, we'll be bringing you a list of ingredients to help you cook up a storm and master methods to finesse your finances. We'll be helping you expand your repertoire and hopefully teach you a few new skills along the way.
So, clear the counters and get your mixing bowls ready for today's recipe. Let's get started. So, Emma, how are your tomatoes coming on?
Well, they actually got a new home this weekend. They went into a bigger pot because they're growing so fast.
Oh, I'm very impressed.
You know, it's going to be really great when we actually all have a life and our conversation doesn't revolve around things that are growing in our garden. Have I mentioned my rhubarb?
Well, she had to get a rhubarb in there, didn't she, Becky?
Yeah. Have you been growing it in the garden?
Well, actually, after my foray earlier in the year with actually making my rhubarb spirits and cordial, which
foraging Becky, we all can't forget that one.
which all tasted very, very nice. I've actually bought myself some rhubarb plants to put in the garden so I could have my own rhubarb fresh from the garden next year.
Sounds good to me.
Very nice.
I need to find a recipe that I can put that in then.
What do you mean? What do you think? You think you're going to get any rhubarb? Have you seen how much gin and vodka I made last month?
I'll do a trade. Rhubarb the tomatoes.
Tomato vodka, tomato gin. Not really sure, but I'll have a look. You never know. Could be a recipe. I was talking to someone the other day and they were making bay leaf liqueur.
Ooh, I do have two bay trees out the front of my house. So.
Oh, well, if you don't mind, if you don't want to lose some leaves, if you can lose some leaves, I'll find out how many I need and you can, I can make some for you.
All right then, we can do a trade.
It comes out a lovely shade of green.
Oh, very nice too. Anyway, do you think we should get on to our episode for today?
I think we should.
I'm just excited about the bay leaves.
Go on then, Becky, kick us off. Tell us what we're doing today.
So, in this week's episode, we are delving deep into the depths of credit cards.
Oh, so a similar topic to we've had before. So, Becky, you took the lead before on store cards.
I did indeed.
But we're having a little bit of a change today, moving on to credit cards.
We are.
So the difference between the store cards and credit cards is that a store card can only specifically be used in one shop. I was going to say Debenhams. That's really awkward because Debenhams isn't there anymore.
Isn't it? When did Debenhams close?
Oh, it's closing down.
Yeah, it's closing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Honestly, I really should pay more attention to what's going on around me. I had a Debenhams store card.
I know you did. But no, so a Debenhams card could only be used in Debenhams, and a John Lewis store card could only be used in John Lewis. So a credit card could be used in any store. So anywhere you go, it could be used MasterCard. It could be used abroad even as well. So lots of different places that you can use a credit card. So, Julie, do you want to tell us why you should use a credit card?
Well, that's a really good question. So credit cards, I think, are one of those things which are kind of like a real good or bad. And people have like different reactions to them. Some people are like, oh my God, it's awful. I really shouldn't have one. And other people are like, yeah, they're really, really good. And I think in the right pair of hands, they can be really, really good. As long as you keep up on with your repayments. And that's the really, really key point of it. And a credit card can, by some people, be used as an addition to their bank account. And that's all well and good as long as you can afford to pay them off each month. And they're actually really, really useful for things like building up your credit rating as well. And by spending a small amount each month and making sure you repay each month, it really shows you have the ability to repay, which can be really, really good when you're after things like mortgages and like maybe car loans. And for bigger items, that credit card regular payment, and that can really help score you brownie points when it comes to that stage. Now, obviously, we're talking about this and saying that, you should always repay it each month, but sometimes there is basically you can't. And that's...
Things happen, don't they? There's emergencies where you just need some extra money.
No, absolutely. And I think, again, they're very, very good at this point. As long as you take care of them, to have them as an emergency fund. So, for example, say you need to have your car repaired because the engine has gone bang, or your washing machine breaks down. They can be used for things for like emergency purchases. And, I'm sure we're going to talk about balance and transfer rates and things like that in a little while. But as long as it's managed properly, and I think if you do use the credit card just for emergencies, make sure it is just for emergencies. They're really handy for lots of different elements.
And it's one of those, as long as you can keep control. If you use it for an emergency and then something else happens and you just keep adding more and more onto it, you've got to be able to keep the control. But then some people can use them in other ways. So they can use them to be completely advantageous to them. So, Julie, I know you do something like this. You use the points or something, don't you?
Yeah, we've got Virgin Atlantic credit cards, and so we use basically every time we spend any money on them, it builds up miles, and then we use those miles to go on holiday. So we like to go to Las Vegas every year. So normally we end up flying for free with a free upgrade. So for every I think it's every £5,000 we spend. And my husband drives a lot for work, so he puts a lot of diesel in his car, and we get a free upgrade to Premier Economy on a Virgin flight, and then we use the miles to then get our flights essentially for free. We just have to pay for tax, so that works really, really well.
So yeah, basically making the credit card work for you. For someone that travels a lot, air miles are really good, but other cards have different advantages and different points. So I've had a little look, done a little bit of research for us, and Tesco's credit card, for every £4 you spend in Tesco's, you get a point. And every £8 that you spend elsewhere, you get a club card point. So we all know we like those little club card point vouchers dropping on our doorsteps.
And what do points make?
They make prizes. So Tesco's, that's their credit card. That's what they have on offer at the moment. Sainsbury's do a very similar thing where you get 750 points every time you spend £35 in the first 2 months, up to £10. So that's going to be earning you some Nectar points. And you get 3 points for every £1 you spend in Sainsbury's and Argos, and 1 point for every £5 spent elsewhere. I know M&S do a very similar card where you can gain points to spend in M&S as well. So there's lots of different ways to make your credit card work for you.
And I believe that British Airways, they also have a credit card, and it's Avios points, I believe it is. And then you can use those for lots and lots of different things, not just flights.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that. Learned something new on that one. So there's not only the points that you can earn on credit cards that you can use to spend elsewhere, you can actually use them to do balance transfers and different things. So Becky, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what balance transfers are and how they work?
Well, if you have a balance on one credit card and you may be paying interest of, say, 15% on that balance, you can transfer that balance from card A onto another credit card, so let's say credit card B, and credit card B may have a 0% APR interest offer on for X amount of months, or maybe X amount of years even if you're really lucky. So you can transfer that balance of, say, £1,000 from credit card A, where you're paying 15% interest on it, to credit card B, where you can have that balance sit there and you're not earning any interest on it.
So basically you can pay it off quicker because the interest isn't accruing on that.
Exactly, like we saw in the store cards episode, where the interest rolls up and rolls up and rolls up.
And certainly for times of the year, like at the moment with things happening, with obviously the circumstances we've had in the last sort of 12, 18 months of lockdown, this could be a way of buying yourself some extra time if you need it for clearing your credit cards.
Very true. So I've done a little bit more research on this one. So I actually found a Virgin Money credit card that had a 28-month balance transfer credit card. So what that means is you could transfer money onto there, and for 28 months it would be at 0%. But it is worth noting that there is a fee for doing it. So the Virgin Money card has a 2.7% fee for transferring the balance. So if you transferred £5,000, it cost you £135 to transfer it. Now, £135 might sound like a lot, but if you think your credit card might have been 15-20% previously, you're not going to be paying any of that interest. Nothing's going to be accruing. So it could be well worthwhile for having that on a 0% for 28 months. Something that I've noticed in the past that's worth noting about doing balance transfers is a lot of the cards are sneaky and the balance transfer is 0%, but for purchases, it may still have an interest rate at, say, 15%, 19%, whatever a normal kind of credit card rate is at the time. So if you spend any money on your card whilst you've got the balance transfer, when you pay any money off, it pays off the balance transfer part, which is at 0%, and the money that you've kind of purchased, so say you've, £50 for your petrol, the interest is still going to keep accruing on that part, and you can't physically pay that purchaser's part off until you've cleared the entire balance transfer first. So like this one, £5,000, it might take you a little while to get through that, so the interest is going to be accruing on anything you've already spent.
That's very sneaky of them, isn't it?
It is very sneaky, but
really
I suppose they've got to
sneaky.
make some money somewhere if everything was 0%.
I think that's one of the good things is actually if you're going to do a 0% credit card, if you have got to pay any more, have a different credit card or keep the old one that you've done the balance away from to put any new purchases on, because at least then you can then always pay that money off as well before you then go into the balance transfer 0% one.
Yeah, so like we said before about the points, it's making it work for you and doing what you need to do with your card to make it work best. So I said about the balance transfer one, cards often have other features as well. So sometimes they have introductory rates. So like I just said about the balance transfer, you can't pay off the purchases. Some of them will have a 0% on purchases for 3 months if your balance transfer is like 28 months. So for those 3 months, you'll be okay. But anything after that, that you would be paying the interest on.
And I bet they don't drop you an email to remind you of that either, do they?
Oh, of course they don't. Don't be so ridiculous. I'm sure somewhere there's a reminder in the small print, but I don't think they'd make it that obvious. So there's also something called money transfers. Have you heard of those?
I haven't, in all honesty, no.
Have you not?
I haven't, no.
Have you heard of them, Julie?
I have, yes.
Yeah, so money transfers are similar to balance transfers, but the difference being instead of transferring the balance from one credit card to another, this one puts a balance onto your credit card, but the money gets transferred into your current account. So say you were purchasing something where they didn't take card payment and you needed the money physically in your bank account to make a back payment or something because they don't take card, this might be why you would do a money transfer, to have that kind of money as cash in your bank that you can physically use. So it is, like I say, moving money, a lump sum into your bank account, but this doesn't tend to do your credit rating any favours. It's kind of one of those things that you can do quite easily and it's quite accessible to do, but it does leave like a footprint in your credit score, like in particular, and it's one of those things that isn't a particularly great thing to do. So I wouldn't recommend doing it for the sake of it if you just want to have some money in your bank account or something like that. I would only use it as a kind of last resort, an emergency, if you can't get any money from anywhere else at all. But it is a way to access some money. And they do them like the balance transfers on 0% for a period of time. So you can repay it. So in an emergency, you could get a lump sum of money and then repay it when you can afford to. With money transfers, like with the balance transfer, there is a fee for doing it. And the fee for a money transfer does also tend to be quite a bit higher as well. So a Virgin Money 28-month money transfer card, the fee for the transfer is 4%. So if you were transferring £5,000, it'd be a fee of £200. So £65 doesn't sound a huge amount more than the balance transfer, but if you were to do larger amounts of money as such, then obviously it's going to be a costly way of doing it. And then just remember, when you're doing it as a lump sum, so say it was even £10,000 that you did, and you didn't repay, you only repaid minimum payments over the first kind of introductory period, they can often then go up to a much higher rate. So imagine £10,000 and then the interest rate goes up to 21.9%. It's soon going to be adding up, and then your only way to kind of get it back onto a 0% is by balance transfers. And if it's something that you continually do, it might be more and more difficult to obtain those cards, because obviously on your credit score, it's going to see that every 2 years you're applying for a new credit card, and obviously that everything that you do is a mark on your credit score. So not necessarily a bad thing, but obviously the more active it is, doesn't always do you any favours either. So do you have anything else about credit cards that you can tell us?
I don't have anything else.
I think really you've covered most of it, Emma. I think the take home away for credit cards is that in the right place, they're a really, really good tool. They're good for an emergency fund. They're good to help your credit rating, and they're really handy, if you use it on a regular basis. And there's some real great benefits to have from them. But in the wrong hands, they could be a really, really easy way to build up debts. And I know over the years that we've all heard stories of people who have used them as an extension of their bank accounts. And certainly I've heard stories of I say younger people, makes it sound really old, doesn't it? But they've been given really, really high credit score, really, really high credit limits, and have gone out and bought things without really realising that actually at some point they're going to have to pay that money back. And it isn't just paying the money back that's the problem, it's the interest on top of that. So I think that's the thing. The interest rates aren't, bearing in mind like a mortgage rate at the moment is about 1.5, 1.69%. you're talking at 15, 21% interest rates. That's huge. Now, I know there's smaller figures than mortgages, but there's still, there's still some big amounts.
All adds up,
It does all add up.
I actually have an interesting story about this. It was someone that I used to know. They went bankrupt, and he'd gone bankrupt because he used to put things on credit cards, and it just got out of control. Couldn't afford to repay them, and the only way out of it was to go bankrupt. And he then, a few years later, after his bankruptcy had cleared and everything, kept getting letters in the post. Would you like a credit card? And obviously, having been bankrupt and having a very poor credit score, they were all very, very high percentages, credit cards. And every month he took it out, which I wouldn't have done if it had been me in that position, took out this credit card. But every month he got a letter, your credit limit's been increased, your credit limit's been increased, your credit limit's been increased.
Wow.
And for someone that didn't have the best relationship with money and spent as much as they could, he saw that as a challenge. They keep giving me more money, I need to spend more money. And that actually resulted in a second bankruptcy because it was someone that couldn't take control of his spending and was actually being encouraged by a credit card provider almost to, here you go, here's more money, see if you can spend this, and put him in a really poor position. So it just goes to show someone that can use points and build things up and use them to work really well for them, that's fantastic. But other people don't necessarily have that same kind of control over the money that they'd like to have and can leave them in a really poor position. So
credit cards, go with caution.
Most definitely.
All the C's.
And with that, we've completed today's recipe. We hope you have enjoyed following along with us today and cooking yourself one recipe closer to a financially secure future.
If you've enjoyed today's podcast, you can head over to www.recipeforfinancialsuccess.co.uk, where you can find out more information and a full list of ingredients from today's recipe. For more hints, tips and tasters, find us on Facebook at Your Recipe for Financial Success.
If you'd like to get more involved, share your own experiences and learn from a friendly community on a similar journey to you, why not join us in our new Facebook group, The Money Compass, where we will support you to navigate your way to financial success.
Thank you for listening and see you next time.